Good afternoon, Warden Initiates. My name is Mark of Dream Big Games, and I'm here to teach you how to play Wardens of Wulvengrad. I am the designer, and I'm going to start sharing some videos about basically just playthroughs. So I thought it'd be a good chance to basically create, first of all, how to play Wardens of Wulvengrad 101. So what I've done is I've uploaded the TTS version of it, which is available for anyone who wants to give it a try. But I'll just give you a run through of how the game plays, how it flows, and then basically when we come to doing the actual playthroughs, then it actually makes a little bit of sense to you what's going on. So first of all, the premise of the game, we are 4 wardens. We are all working together basically to take down various large monsters that we are hired to take down and basically stop them from rampaging and killing the local villagers, upsetting them, everything like that. So the fights will get progressively harder as the game goes on. It will primarily be a campaign game. However, you have the ability to basically one-shot any of the monsters if that's what you'd rather do as well. But the game works through a story with gear, character progression, basically getting better, getting more equipment, better equipment, so you can fight the challenges that are going to come. So first of all, I'll start off with how a player board looks for our wardens. So let's start off with Shadow. That's its first. So there's 4 different wardens, and they're all completely unique. Now, each warden has their own basic health here. This is basically what they start off with in their bag, which is basically 4 different tiles, and they're all stored in here. Basically, this is your health bag, and like it says, when it's empty, it's game over. You win or lose as a team. So when he dies, then the whole team is out. So you have some basic health. You also have these green ones, which are called buffs in here. So characters start with some already in their bag. However, you can play cards, abilities to basically to buff characters further, and basically to improve your odds of surviving. So first one in here is counter attack. So basically when you draw this out, if you're adjacent to the monster, you get to stab it back for 1 damage, and hopefully you can pull something out the bag. Now when you're taking damage, so say for instance you're taking 4 damage, you draw 4 tokens from your bag. And you draw them out, the order that they come out is important. So you place them on this run along the top. Just being very lazy and doing all higgledy-piggledy. But what I want to talk about the block buff first of all. So when you draw this out as part of your taking damage, doesn't matter where you draw it out in the sequence. So whether you draw it first, whether you draw it last, everything else you've drawn gets to go back into the bag. So you've effectively blocked all this damage. And then this would just be returned back to your board so that you can basically buff it again. Dodge works kind of the same, except for only dodges what comes after it. So if I was to do something like this, if that was the sequence that I drew them in, then basically I would dodge these 2, so they'd go back into the health bag, but these 2 would be placed on my player board as damage. Whenever any of these buffs are taken out, then I can basically play cards, play abilities to get them put back in. Now they also double up just as extra health, so it's always a good idea to put them in your bag whenever you can. However, it is a closed system between the bag and what you have on your board, so if you have all your block tokens in your bag and someone plays an ability which would make you put another one in your bag, you can't do it. You're basically stuck. Now, each character has their own unique deck of cards. So you've got 15 cards, and each card is basically made up of 2 parts. So the game's split into 2 phases. We'll go through the Warden phase, which is we all activate, and then once we're finished taking all our actions, then the monster phase will happen. He'll do his thing. But the top half of the card can be played at any point during the monster phase. The warden phase. So you'll have 5 cards in hand to begin with, and you can basically play as little as many of them as you like, any way you want. It's very freeform. So for instance, I could move, one of the other warriors could move, and then it could come back to me, I'll play a card, someone else might attack. Whatever order we want to do it in is completely freeform, but once we've all finished taking our actions, then it's the monster's turn to do something. So the top half, we can activate that in the warden phase. The bottom half is called an opportunity, which basically can be played anytime that the card allows. So as you can see, this one, blind spot, it does specify it's when the monster card is revealed. So before he selects a target, it basically takes me out of the running of being a threat for that one, so it allows me to kind of avoid the monster's wrath. But when I use the card for either ability, then I basically discard the pile. And the chief way of getting all my cards back is basically to spend a turn resting, which is doing nothing, which will basically reset my whole deck. Now, when it comes to attacking, the way that attacking works is that I can only attack once per turn. However, what I can do is I can place as many cards as I want into the attack to basically increase its strength. And what I would do is I'd create what's called a stack. Now, only one special ability will activate, so that's the card that's on the top. So in this case, I would add up the strength of all 3 of these cards. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, plus I'd activate the gold special ability text. So this one gives me the choice to increase its rage meter, basically to gain extra damage. So it is a very risky versus reward move. If I can basically do that, I can add on whatever weapon that I'm using, and I can add that strength on. So this, in this case, this would be a strength 4 attack, because the sword would be added into this. Now let's have a look at some of the monster stuff. So this is the monster's stat board, and it basically tells us everything we need to know about the monster. So first of all, he's got a movement of 5, and he also has a basic armor of 2. So we're going to deduct 2 off every single time we do damage to it. So we need to kind of bear that in mind when we're doing it. The only exception is each monster, somewhere on its base, will have a little red section. If you attack from the hex directly behind that, then basically his armor is 1 less. So it's got his weak spot. You can get in there and do a little bit more extra damage. Now, this is the starting monster, the Wounded Razor Tusk. Starts off with 30 health, and this tells us what starts off in his wound bag. So each monster has its own unique physiology, which is depicted by these tokens. So we have a little bit of known information, so we know roughly what's in here. However, there are always 5 random ones, which are a combination of these 4. So we never know exactly what's in there. We can't game it enough that until you pull out an extra one. That's the only time you know when there's actually an extra one in there. So let's have a look at what these tokens actually mean. So the first one we look at is just a basic wound token. So makes up the majority of the bag. When we draw these out, this is what we claim these. So claiming basically just means we keep it. Now, next one up is an armor token. So with these, it represents a slightly tougher part of the monster. And basically, in order for us to claim this, we have to do what's called break through it. So what that means is basically cost me 1 to draw the token and then an extra 1 to break through it to claim it. So basically this is worth 2 of your damage to smash it. if you were to draw this last out the bag, you can't smash it, so therefore it would go back in. Now, reactions. First of all, it increases his rage, which we're trying to avoid as much as possible, but it's going to happen, and there's not much you can do about it sometimes. But what happens when you draw one of these tokens is he's basically going to turn around and he's going to counter attack you right there and then, unless, again, of course, you can do spend an extra 2 damage basically to smash through that as well. But you can only smash through one of these per attack, so if you're really unlucky and you smash through one and you draw another one, unfortunately you have to deal with the second one. Now, by far the worst token that's in there is the rage token. So first of all, it'll increase his rage by 1, but what it means is he'll counter attack from his rage deck immediately, and the reason why this one is so dangerous is because you cannot break through it. So this will cancel the rest of your attack. So you're going to do 5 damage and you pull this out last. It's not as bad as pulling it out first. Basically undoes all that damage. Now, this Wounded Razor Tusk doesn't have any special tokens, but these do come in to other monsters later on in the game. So set a number of them in their bags to begin with. The stat sheet basically tells you, if you look at the special section here, it would tell you what that token does basically when you draw it. So if you were going to do, in my case, we were doing 4 damage, I would draw 4 minus 2 for the armor. Well, actually, it's going to be minus 1 because I'm standing in the back. So I'm going to do 3 damage to this. So what I would do is I would draw 3 tokens from the bag, and I draw them one at a time and resolve them. That's a very successful first attack. Now, for every 3 tokens that I claim from this bag in any one attack, I also break off a little part of the monster. So if you look here, I was attacking into zone 4. So what I would do is on here as well, you can see I've got a representation of the monster's base. I would claim one of these tokens. So basically little bits of the monster that we can use when we come back to the village to craft new gear. So I'll claim all these as I'm breaking bits off, and I'll get them all at the end of the fight. If I'm lucky enough to clear an area completely, then what happens is I actually get a unique part of the monster as well. So I hit it enough in the back, I'm going to cut his tail off. Now, when it comes to the monster's turn, basically he has 3 decks, and they get progressively nastier as the fight goes on. So first of all, every turn his rage goes up by 1, and then you draw from his basic deck. So let's just have a look at this card and we'll see exactly what it does. So the top half of the card tells us who he's going to target. So let me just bring this over here. So the first targeting stipulation is closest threat in view. So in view is the green marked area of his base, and this projects out in a cone of vision equivalent to his movement. So his movement is 5, so basically you can see 5 hexes, or you can see right up to here, and then this way you can basically see up to here. So you would do the first one. If you can't do that, you would then default to the next stage, which would be closest threat in range. However, Poor Creeve is standing in his view right now, so he would be targeted for this attack. So once we've got our target, we move down to the second half of the card. So he would face the target and then he'd move adjacent. Doesn't need to do that, he's already there. However, what these symbols mean is he would do 5 damage to Creeve. The black tokens are statuses, so what happens is you don't deal with these straight away, they go into your health bag with the potential to come out later on as you're taking damage. So you can have some in your bag, but you don't want to put too many in there, and you definitely don't want to see them all when you're taking damage. So this status would be stun. When you draw that, when you're taking damage, you're discarding cards from your hand or your deck. So the next symbol is the 4. So the 4, this means that it's going to push 4 away. The arrows on the base show what direction it'd be pushed. So Cleave would be pushed up this way, 4 hexes. And then the last symbol finally is that he would be knocked down. So when he's knocked down, basically means he has to activate after all the standing players, and all his buffs don't help him when he's down there. He can't activate abilities either until he's back on his feet. So it can be quite precarious to be in that kind of position. But the final stage of this would be he would run in a random direction. So numbers on the base, these denote, basically you roll a die and that will tell you what direction he's going to go in. So 2. See, here's 2 here. So what you do is go this way, and then you move forward 5. And that would be the end of his turn. When it comes back to the Warden phase, then what happens is that you draw your hand back up to 5, but you get to decide first of all if you want to discard any of the cards that you've kept from the previous turn. Now, let's talk a little bit about Warden movement. So, at the start of your turn, every Warden has a basic movement of 3 hexes, so you can take that every turn for free. Now, if I want to move any further, I can discard any number of cards from my hand, and I can gain an extra 2 movement for each. So, for instance, I could throw away this card to give me the extra 2 to get back in here. But all the movement, all the attacks, everything like that, you can do them in completely whatever order you want to between your party. One person can move, one can attack. Basically, there's no hidden information between yourselves. You can share what abilities you have. You can discuss a plan basically before you go out and attack it. But the object of the game is to empty this bag. Once that bag is empty, then it's dead. Now, when you draw one of those reaction tokens out, if you can't break through it, then what you do is you would draw from his reaction deck, which are slightly nastier attacks. When you draw the token out, you actually don't follow the targeting rules at the top. He will always target the person who's attacking him. So it can be a very, very dangerous situation to get into. But the important thing to note is when you draw from the reaction or rage deck, first of all, it goes into the discard pile. However, next time you draw from either of these 2 decks, the discard pile gets shuffled back into his basic deck. So basically he's deck building, his attacks are getting nastier as the fight goes on. If at the start of his turn his rage is at 6, you draw a rage card instead. Now these are by far the worst attacks they can do. So this is all wardens within 3 hexes. We take 4 damage. We take 2 different statuses and exhaust, which negates your buffs. And then the stun again, but also the last one is you discard 2 cards from your action deck. If ever you can't discard cards if you don't have an action deck, you're taking damage instead. So it'd be very dangerous to let that get out of control. If anything was to increase rage when you're already at this point, you would gain an extra 1 rage damage to his next attack. So you don't want these piling up too much either, because it can make these cards that are already nasty, and you don't want to make them any nastier. But once the attack is resolved, provided that everybody's still alive, before you reset the rage track, it does the minimum rage counter moves up by 1. So what it means is that each turn he's getting closer and closer to, quicker to rage. So you want to avoid that as much as possible. What you don't want to be is you don't want to be in this situation where basically he's raging every turn, because that's not going to be fun for anyone. The fight's pretty much over unless you can do something quick about that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is just resting. So the chief way of resetting your deck is to spend a turn resting, and what that means is that you don't do anything for your whole turn. So the first thing you have to do is any cards that you have in your hand. Let's see if I can find one here. Here we go. So you can see this intervene at the bottom has a defense on it, a 1 defense, which can reduce any damage coming towards me by 1. So I can keep any of these cards in my hand to block any incoming damage, but then everything else gets shuffled in and basically it resets my whole deck. Now when I'm resting, I also get to either heal 2 damage, so if I've got 2 tokens on here, I can put them back in the bag, or I can go through my bag and I can remove one of those black status tokens from it. All those instructions, they are on this card here. But I don't actually draw my new hand until the start of the next Warden phase, so just be very careful where you do your rest. Now, you can choose to rest any turn you want, however, if you start a turn with no action deck to draw from at all, you have to rest. So it's up to you whether you play it right down to the wire with no cards left, but it does leave you in a potentially very dangerous situation. And that is your initiation into Wardens of Wulvengrad. So good luck out there, Wardens, I'm not going to lie. You've got an uphill struggle ahead of you, but I'm here to protect you, to guide you, and work together. You'll quickly find that if you don't work together, then you're not going to win this. Good luck, have fun, and I'll see you on the next video.